Nile to Nebo, the life story of Moses. Part 7. So far and so near. One morning, while the Israelites were camped in the desert, the cloud above the special tent called the tabernacle started to drift away. So God's people knew that it was time once again to move on. God was leading his people to the promised land, a home of their own, which was flowing with milk and honey. Everyone busily packed up all their belongings, took down their tents and prepared to follow the column of cloud. They eventually stayed in another desert area where the people settled once more in their family groups. There, God told Moses to send out an exploration party to spy out the land towards which God was leading his people. It was the land of Canaan. Moses chose 12 leading men, one from each of the main tribes or family groups. Instructing these chosen men, Moses said, "Go up over the hills and carefully spy out the land. Check on the people who live there and the kind of settlements they live in. Observe the crops they grow, and if you can, bring back some of the fruit you'll find." So the 12 men set out on their expedition. Once they reached Canaan, they moved cautiously, darting from one hiding place to another, getting as close as they could to where the people lived and worked, but taking care to keep out of sight. Can you imagine how they felt?
"Look," whispered one, "over there. See the size of those soldiers? They're enormous."
"Did you see that city over there? It's huge and surrounded by high, thick walls."
"Shh, be quiet. Someone will hear us."
A couple of the search party had disappeared, and when they came back, they could hardly contain their excitement. "Look at the size of these grapes. We also found fig trees loaded with fruit, and pomegranates too. Here, help me carry some of these back with us." So after completing their expedition, the spies returned to the Israelite camp, with 2 of them shouldering a pole laden with figs, grapes, and pomegranates. Moses gathered the people so that they could hear the report of the spies. They reported that the land was really fertile, and that there were loads of crops and fruit trees. "Look at these," they said. "This is just one tiny sample of the masses of fruit we saw." "Come on then, let's go," shouted someone from the crowd.
"Wait," said one of the spies. "The fruit is good, but the people are awesome. Their cities are strongly fortified, and you wouldn't believe how tall some of their fighting men are. They made us feel like grasshoppers."
"We're no match for them. If we attacked, we wouldn't stand a chance."
2 of the spies, Caleb and Joshua, didn't agree, but said that God's people should go into Canaan and take possession of the land. "God will give us success," they said. The problem was that the 10 other spies spread their bad report and caused many to rebel against Moses and his brother Aaron. So much so that God declared that all of those who were 21 years old or more when they left Egypt, only Joshua and Caleb would survive long enough to enter Canaan. The ban even applied to Moses and Aaron. That was because once, when the people were complaining about the lack of water to drink, God told Moses to speak to a rock, and from it would flow fresh water. Moses was angry with the people because of their grumbling, and so instead of giving God the credit, he shouted, "Must we bring you water from this rock?" And he hit it hard with his walking stick, not once, but twice. It worked. Water started gushing out of the rock, but God told Moses and Aaron that their failure to fully trust God and to give him the credit for this miracle would mean that they too would not go into Canaan. So from time to time the people journeyed from place to place, and despite all that God had done for them, they still complained. Still they wished they were back in Egypt. Their grumbling was once so bad that God sent poisonous snakes among the people. Many were bitten and died. And as they had done many times before, the people urgently turned to Moses. "Please help us! We are sorry about our moaning against God and against you. Pray that God will take away these horrible snakes. Please, Moses, please." So Moses prayed, and God told him to make a metal snake and hoist it up on a pole so that everyone could see it. Moses shouted to the people,
Listen, God says that if anyone is bitten by a snake, they should look up to this one on the pole, and if they do, they will not die but will live.
And that was the way God provided a rescue for the people suffering the fatal effects of snake bites. After 40 years of their nomadic travels, God's people reached Moab. There, Moses realized that he wouldn't live much longer. So he composed a song that he recited to all of God's people. It reminded them of God's greatness, his holiness, and his fatherly care. It also reminded them of their own ingratitude and willful disobedience that would never go unpunished. Then, having passed on his blessing to each of the main family groups, Moses, who was now 120 years old, climbed Mount Nebo, as God had instructed him to do. When he reached the peak, puffing and panting from the strenuous climb, he saw a magnificent view. It almost took what breath he had left away. He was able to see the border of Canaan and look beyond over the countryside towards Jericho and even further afield. He could see for miles and miles. God told Moses what he could see was the land that he had promised to Abraham for his descendants, a promise he was about to keep. But this was as close as Moses was allowed to go. He was so near, having travelled so far. So it was there that Moses died, at the end of a lifetime journey that had taken him from the river Nile in Egypt to this mountain called Nebo, right on the verge of the promised land. And it was Joshua, not Moses, who led God's people into the promised land. Of Moses, this most amazing man of faith, it is recorded that he was unique for two reasons: that God knew him intimately, face to face, and that he had been used by God in a most powerful way in the great rescue story of the Old Testament.